Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Megan Halsband. I'm a reference specialist in the newspaper and current periodical reading room at the Library of Congress. I have the very good fortune to work with the library's comic book collection, which I think is why all of you are here today to talk about comics and pop culture. Hopefully, you'll feel excited about talking about it, and so don't save your questions for the end. Feel free to ask questions at any time. I'm hoping that we can all talk about what our favorite comics are, or stories, or what have you. I have some images from the library's collections, but I'm really hoping that you'll tell me kind of more about what you want to talk about today. So I thought I might tell you a little bit about the collection to start with, and then we can kind of get started. So, let's see, oops. Did we go? There we go. So, read and meet, comic books and pop culture, just to make sure you're in the right place. The library has one of the largest comic book collections in the world. How many people know about the library's comic book collection? Yes, no, maybe not so many. So, that's part of the reason why I'm here today. The library has about 160,000 comic book issues, first issues in our collection. It grows probably by about 10,000 a year or so, give or take, and we have about 8,000 titles. We don't have everything, but we have a lot. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do as the librarian that works with the collection is let more people know about it, because you can come into my reading room, you can request comic books, you can read them, you can do research, or you can just come and enjoy them. We actually have a number of self-service comics now in our reading room that you can come and just read. Most of the collection is by request, but if you come in and you can ask for me, or you talk to one of my colleagues in the reading room, we'll pull materials from our collection and help you get started using it. Everything's in the online catalog. So one of the things that I would say is that you kind of have to know what you're looking for to be able to request it, but that's why librarians like me are there to help. So let's see if I push this. There we go. So anybody know either of these titles? Famous Funnies, Jumbo Comics? Yes. So Famous Funnies is kind of considered one of the first comic books. It was published in 1934. Mostly reprints of newspaper strips, and so subsequently after that is when we began to get comic books with original content and kind of the format as we know them today. Jumbo Comics on the right there is actually a little bit larger than standard size, but one of the really cool things about this one is it has early work by Will Eisner. Anybody know Will Eisner? Yeah. That name's a little bit more familiar. He, is a legendary comic artist. Also coined the term graphic novel, which many of you probably read today. How many of you are graphic novel readers? Do you have a favorite graphic novel? Anybody? Rapunzel's Revenge by Shannon Hale, who's actually here today. We have a number of graphic novelists and artists here presenting at the festival. Hopefully you guys are going to come and check them out a little bit later. I'll be at the main stage with Raina Telgemeier I believe that it's at 4 o'clock today, but I know there's presenters throughout the day. So one of the things that the library sort of quirkily does is we separate graphic novels and comic books, even though most people don't necessarily do that on their own, and it's a cataloging issue, and if you want me to tell you more, I certainly will. But in my section, we have the floppy comics, so the loose staple-bound issues that you get from your comics shop or that used to be on newsstands. And so in addition to those, the library has a wide variety of related materials. So on the left there, you see the original drawing for Amazing Fantasy 15. We We have Amazing Fantasy 15 too. We have Superman. We have the first cover appearance of Wonder Woman. So as the slides kind of go through, you'll see some examples from our collection. Hopefully there's something that you like or that you're interested in. I'll point out really quickly. The library actually gets the bulk of its collection through U.S. copyright deposit. If you were here earlier, Susan mentioned that we're the home of the U.S. Copyright Office. Publishers are supposed to deposit 2 copies of everything they publish with the Library of Congress. The Copyright Office then makes that available to us for our collections. You might see a stamp right across the head of Iron Man there on the right on Tales of Suspense. That's because that copy came in through copyright deposit in 1961. It is always very painful to look at, but it makes our copy unique, right? So you know that it's the original true thing. They stopped doing that, and my friend George, who works in the Copyright Office, who will be at the pavilion later, I kid him about that, but they don't do that anymore. They put barcodes on it, but that's part of the reason why we have one of the largest collections in the world is because of the U.S. Copyright Office. So we're very fortunate to have that relationship with them. We do buy materials occasionally, and people donate materials to us as well. We have an amazing partnership with the Small Press Expo collection, which if you guys have a chance to come in 2 weeks, it'll be up in Bethesda. It's a wonderful chance to meet independent and small press publishers and artists who are working in the field now. They're bringing their materials there and showing them off, and you get to meet them and talk with them, and it's a really great experience. And as a part of that, we acquire materials for the collection. In a little bit, you'll see a couple examples from the Small Press Expo collection at the library, which is part of the larger comic book collection. Something that always really fascinates me and excites me about the library is the overlap that we have between our materials. So, we'll have the film version of the recent Captain Marvel in the motion picture and television reading room, as well as the comic book, as well as the graphic novel version, as well as that person's PhD thesis that they wrote while talking about Captain America and Ms. Marvel and Carol Danvers. And so there's a little bit of something for everybody, no matter what perspective you have on the collection or what kind of use you want to make of it. See some Mickey Mouse there. The library recently actually was gifted the original drawings for Mickey Mouse and Plain Crazy last year by Mr. Stephen Geppy. Sorry, I always mispronounce that. They will actually be on display hopefully next year. We are having a comic art exhibit that opens the same weekend as SPX, so if you get a chance, come down and see it. And we will also be having programming throughout the year. So this year, we're kind of really emphasizing the comic book collection. And so I'm curious to know if there's anything that anybody, if they came to the library, what would you want to see? Or if you came to a program at the library, who would you want to hear from? And anybody want to take a shot at volunteering and talking? Yeah.
I'd be interested in meeting and hearing from some of the female creators in comics. I watched a documentary recently called She Makes Comics, and it talked about the history of women working in the medium and things that they've done in the last 10 years to really not only have more female creators, but more diversity in female characters.
Yeah, so in case you couldn't hear it, the person here was saying that they want to see if we can have some female creators, women creators, comic artists come in because they've been really impactful in the recently in the production of comics. And I'm hoping that we will. We haven't confirmed anybody yet. We do have Lynn Johnston, for better or worse, who's coming to actually talk on the Friday before SPX. But we're hoping to have some other people, big people, so stay tuned. But I would also plug my colleague's book. why am I blanking on Martha's title? It just won an Eisner Award. It's a female cartoonist's book, and I will think of the actual title in just a minute. But it's an amazing book. She did research with the library's collections, just looking at female comic artists and cartoonists. So that, if that's of interest, but yeah. Anybody else? No. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that I personally have been trying to work on as a part of both the Small Press Expo collection and our webcomics collection, which you'll see here. There's a couple examples from that, is to make sure that we're including LGBTQ plus creators and characters of color, and other underrepresented subjects that are from the main collection. So basically anything that's not a male superhero. I'm the person who kind of works primarily with the webcomics collection. So if anybody has webcomics that they read, I'd love to hear that, because I want to know what you're reading and what you're interested in. The collection isn't just about what I like to read, it's about kind of representing what's contemporarily going on with webcomics. So I want to make sure that I'm collecting what people are reading. So I always am interested in hearing about, what you're interested in. I think I have to push play again to get it to recycle from the last one. Okay, we'll just keep going. There we go. The Small Press Expo collection is actually really amazing for collecting that type of material, because there are people working in graphic medicine, there are people who are doing autobio comics, there are people who are doing educational comics, and so it really broadens the scope of what we have in the collection and makes really interesting pairings across both the well-known titles like Spider-Man, and then less well-known titles like, I just pulled a mini comic called Non-Binary for somebody, and so it's a really amazing comic. Just a little mini comic published by Melanie Gilman. They are part of the webcomics collection and also an award-winning artist. So one of the things that's my favorite thing to do is to make some of those connections when I get to pull stuff. I try to write about it on the blog. If there's anything that you'd want to hear about on the blog, I welcome ideas as well. I got to pull a bunch of samurai animals for an Otakon display that we did in June. I guess that was a couple months ago now. That was really fun. I had no idea that there were so many samurai animals in the collection. Anybody? So I'm trying to figure out how to get people to kind of chime in with what they're reading now or what they want to talk about. Yeah.
Hi. I was curious. So obviously the LOC's collections will be infused vastly by U.S. produced material, but I was curious what since comics in the U.S. kind of was a little bubble, and then there were global things happening elsewhere. If the collection gets infused and how it gets infused by comics from outside the U.S.
Yeah, so we have a smaller collection of historical international comics. We have a lot more bande dessinée materials from France and Belgium, because the publishing industry there is so large. We're getting more all the time, and I'm actually in conversation with a number of the overseas offices to see if we can get more international comics. So for example, our staff members in our Cairo office recently went to the Cairo Comics Festival. That's not the right name, but they were acquiring material in Arabic and from creators living in Cairo and the surrounding areas who traveled to that festival. And so that's something that I'm conscious of, that I want to make sure that we're doing. The Japanese specialist is interested in getting some of the some zines with me, so to kind of add to the collection. I would say, as I mentioned before, the library separates things out based on cataloging rules. So all of our manga, for example, in Japanese is all in the Asian division. It's not with me, even though most readers might kind of consider it comic books. And so, you know, one goal of mine is to help people understand, let me rephrase, to sort of break down that arbitrary thing that we do for cataloging and just to kind of explore the collection as a whole, because it's a really amazing collection. I think you were next, and then, yeah.
Okay. Did you read comics before you joined the Library of Congress? Did you have a background in this?
Not really, no. As sort of amazing as that is, so my cousins were very into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and wrestling comics when I was growing up, and that was sort of my first exposure to comic books. I read all kinds of things, but I really, my background is actually in the history of photography. I have a second master's degree in art history. I wrote on stereographs. Does anybody know what stereographs are? No, sort of. They're like the precursor to the Viewmaster. They're cards with two images, and you view them, and they, create a 3D viewing experience. And so, when I happened to get this job at the library as a reference librarian, they needed someone to help with the comic book collection because they didn't have a reference specialist for it, and my background in art history seemed to kind of fit. And so here we are almost 10 years later, and I've learned so much. And that's actually one of the really amazing things about working with the collection is I learn something new every single time I get to talk to somebody about it, because everybody has their own favorite story or character or series, and you can't possibly know everything. So it's been fun to see what people come in, what they want to use the collection for, what they're reading, see people get excited about seeing, Amazing Fantasy 15, and posing with a picture for it. And, at this point, I forget, because I could pull Amazing Fantasy in every day if I wanted to. I forget that most people can't do that sometimes, and so it's a nice reminder to come and talk to people about what they're excited about, because I have the great luxury of being able to work with all of that material. Yeah.
I would say over the last 15 years, 90-95% of my comic reading is webcomics, because that or going into like one of the digital libraries reading the public domain comics.
Yeah.
I would love to see the Library of Congress invite some of the longer running webcomics, because one thing that frustrates me, you can't argue because it's free, is when they go radio silent.
Yes.
Halfway through a series and nothing.
Yeah.
They don't even post that they're leaving, they just quit. I'd like to see some of the longer running ones, like say maybe Order of the Stick, Girl Genius, Galaxian. Some of the ones that have been around for 10, 15, 20 years, Kevin and Kel, which is the longest running webcomic.
Which we have in the collection, by the way. They gave us permission. Yeah. So the sort of comment was that they would like to see presentations and discussion by long-running webcomic artists who are creating this material, because it's a sustained, long-term investment that's often free and underappreciated. And I am trying to get a couple webcomics artists to come in the next year. Hopefully it will be in the spring. If anybody knows Ryan North, tell him that we really want him to come. I'm still trying to convince him that he needs to come down. Kate Beaton is another person who I really want to have. I should email the creators of Kevin and Kel again. I would say, so even though webcomics are free, the library still takes copyright very seriously. So we get permission from all of the artists and creators of the webcomics to crawl and have that material in our collection. We're not just crawling it and like then re-putting it online. We get permission from all of the creators unless they have a Creative Commons license. And so when it becomes, and we have a 1-year embargo, so we're not releasing brand new content. We're not trying to compete with creators' websites, but what we are trying to do is preserve those sites that, you know, stop for whatever reason and haven't had an update in 5 years and could potentially just disappear off the web. Because a lot of artists are, you know, paying for the hosting themselves if they get, you know, if their server dies or if their website manager decides that they don't want to manage the site anymore, or, you know, hopefully not in this case, but the, you know, or the artist passes away, you know, the site just kind of becomes non-functional anymore. And so one of the things that I want to do is collect that material, because that's where a lot of artists get their start. Raina Telgam, I'm going to use Raina as an example in a lot of things today. She actually produced webcomics, and unfortunately I was too late to get those when they were still online because she had already gotten big by the time the collection started. But, you know, I mean, Ryan North is now a full-time comics artist. He just started, and then that's all he does now, and he has books. And you know, I still can't get the oatmeal guy to like contact me back, but I really want to crawl his site too. So yeah, we're working on it. I wish I had a person to announce to you, but stay tuned onto the website, because we're going to have at least 4 lectures this year specifically related to comics and the comic show that's going to be up. What else are people reading right now? Anybody? Yeah. Jay Odin? Okay, no. I will write that down. That's why I brought my pen up. Yeah. Yeah, so, well, you know, again, the people who are creating content based, like fan art or fan comics based on original materials, we're still interested in that, and we still get permission from them to crawl their stuff. So JL8 is one site that we have, so that's Yale Stewart's take on some of the big superhero properties as like tiny people. If you have suggestions, let me know, because I'd be interested. We had a video game event the other day, so if we'd had a Legend of Zelda, I guess it was like in April, if we'd had a Legend of Zelda webcomic, that would have been awesome. Yeah.
Okay, I'm more of a pop culture guy.
Yeah.
Pop culture. I want to ask, what's your opinion on the Area 51 raid?
Oh. I find it very interesting cultural phenomenon. I'm interested in the documentation and like what people are saying. I mean, I don't know that I personally would go, but I find it very fascinating. And as a librarian, you know, I'm very curious where people are getting some of their information from. So I don't know if I feel qualified to answer that question. I'm hoping that we have a general news on the internet website, or a web archive, sorry. And so as a part of that, I'm hoping that we're collecting information about what people are talking about that. Does that make sense? The library hasn't had a strategic collection policy with regard to pop culture per se. I'm hoping that we can change that, because it's a big part of today. And if we're collecting materials for people to use in the future, and if we're collecting materials for people to see themselves in the library, that's a big part of what happens today.
Chris, where's my money?
Yeah. Catalog. There is. So we have another web archive collection that's actually the called Web Cultures. We recently released a data set. There's a meme data set and a Giphy data set because as a part of that particular archive, they crawl things like Know Your Meme and I think I'm blanking on the Giphy site, the main Giphy site. Giphy.com or whatever it is, but Urban Dictionary and all kinds of other things. And so I've been talking with one of the librarians who works on that. One of the things that I want to get as a part of that, or maybe as a separate collection, are fan sites. And so kind of going back to your comment on fan culture, I think that that's a really big part of it too, because people are active and engaged online, and that's kind of where a lot of the discussion is happening. People don't publish zines like they used to. A lot of it's online, and so through the Web Archive program, we're trying to get more of that. In November, I'm hoping, the Comics, Literature, and Criticism Archive will go live. So I've been collecting websites about, like blogs about comic books and comic book culture, so comic book resources and Comic-Con and The Beat and various other Black Girl Nerds is another site that's in there. And so I'm trying to collect a wide variety of stuff, of sites that talk about comics and pop culture too. So look for that in hopefully October, November. But there is a Giphy and a meme data set at the Library of Congress. Yeah. Oop, sorry. If you go to loc.gov/web archiving, you can get to all the collections with web archive content, but you could also search Giphy dataset LOC or meme dataset LOC, and it'll take you right there. Oh, the comics one, the Comics, Literature, and Criticism website, or web archive. That's not live yet. That'll go live in November. But the two collections that are live are for the Small Press Expo collection. So we collect Ignatz Award-winning artists through that. And then the Web Comics collection, which has things like dinosaur comics in it. Yeah.
I was wondering if for, like how a library that mostly focuses on text has a summer reading list, if for children or anyone or someone who just wants to kind of get through a couple choice pieces of comics, graphic novels, or things like that over the summer, if there's a summer reading list or if you guys are thinking about it. I know work goes into it and you need manpower.
Yeah. There is a recently formed comics and graphic novels interest group as a part of the American Library Association, and I believe they are actually working on working on reader lists and other things for that. That's actually something that's really interesting, and I've been talking with the current president of that group about that. The library has to be careful because we can't endorse a single publisher over another. So I don't know exactly how that would look if it came from us, but it might come from someplace like the Comics and Graphic Novels group from ALA. And certainly we would be happy to be a part of that kind of curation process because, those librarians are also working with often public libraries or school libraries, and so they're really seeing what people are interested in too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody? Yeah.
Okay, I can't.
That's okay. You can come talk to me later if you want. Anybody else? Yeah. Yes. So the short answer is yes to both. I would like to see international programming as well. One of the tricky parts is getting people here and finding money to bring them here. I'm one of the only librarians that works on this collection, so it's a lot of just me doing things. There's catalogers and a lot of other people who are interested, but there aren't that many of us. I would like to see that though, and then electronic comics, so digital comics. We don't have a subscription to a lot of the big three. They have their own digitized stores, for lack of a better word. And we couldn't provide free access to that because everything's still protected by copyright. That being said, the library is looking at obtaining digital copies of things. So if there's a comic book that's digital only, we would certainly be interested in doing that. And we have a subscription database called Alexander Street Press, Underground Comics, spelled various different ways, that actually has digitized a number of underground materials and things like the Comics Journal and other stuff. So we're looking into it. It's complicated because everything pretty much is still protected by U.S. copyright. And so we wouldn't be able to provide free access to that. So yeah. Yeah.
So, given most of the early work in doing comics online, what is your stance on archiving work by like YouTube animators? Since most of them do like story time animation, and most of them start out doing comics online.
Yeah. The question was about YouTube animators and whether we're collecting them. What's my kind of stance on that? I would like that because I think, comic books don't live alone by themselves. They're part of a larger thing, and we certainly have animated films as a part of the library's film collections. YouTube is complicated. We get some YouTube materials through the web archiving program. It is tricky because there's a lot of code that basically blocks the software that goes out and crawls things on the web. A lot of that's built into YouTube. So it actually takes a person like pushing play and going past some of that blocking robots text stuff that you may have heard about. I'm not explaining this very eloquently, but at the moment we would only be really selective about that. And I would probably talk with some of the motion picture and film curators about that because I'd be curious to know what they think and what they might want to collect. So that's actually a really good suggestion. Thank you. Yes. The age-old security/preservation question. Yes, we have a lot of material that is old. So that is one of the challenges that I run into every day is, do I serve this thing that is basically falling apart because it's so old so that somebody can read it, or do I tell them no to keep it safer? The library has done a number of things to help preserve the collection. We've digitized, I'm sorry, not digitized. We've deacidified a lot of the paper materials. So basically we've treated them with a magnesium salt that helps reduce the acidity of the paper because early comics were all printed on newsprint. They weren't meant to last. The conservators call it inherent, that say that the paper has inherent vice. I say it's eating itself. So the magnesium oxide salt helps slow down that process. It doesn't reverse damage and it doesn't halt it entirely. We store all of the comics in acid-free enclosures that have windows that you can see the cover. They're all stored in Hollinger boxes in our vault, so they're all in climate-controlled, secure housing. That helps. Nothing is going to stop the paper from deteriorating ultimately. And so one of the things that I'd like to look into more is, can we make a facsimile or something so that people can read it, and I can pull them and they pull the original, they can see the cover, but then they can read the facsimile. I'm not sure where the balance is right now. As far as security, so the legend goes that the comic book collection used to be in one of the cages in the general collection, and that staff used to go and have their lunch breaks in the comic book cage. So we have pulled that material out of that location, and it's in our vault now, and we definitely don't eat with the comic books, because no. But there's sort of, they weren't meant to last. They're ephemeral materials, and so we do what we can, but we also want to provide access. Some of the stuff that there's an issue of pogo that's coming up, I can't serve that to anybody. It's held together with tape. But we have it, and someday maybe we can scan it and make a facsimile. So yeah, it's complicated. I know I've said that before, sorry. Yeah.
Also, given the explosion of superhero movies that we're seeing now, that's not really a new phenomenon.
Yeah.
Because of we had the serials back in the 40s, that were full public serials. Have you all coordinated anything maybe with the movie film thing as far as like doing old comics and like, or not only the modern stuff, but even maybe getting some of the older comics out with some like the old Republic serials showing that, showing what it was like back then?
We try, so if we have a special display of stuff, I try to go across the collections and pull stuff from various places. It sort of depends on what the event theme is, because I try to pull based on that. That would be something potentially for a future exhibit. I know when we had a small exhibit last year, we had some comic books along with some of the pulp magazines like Incredible Science Fiction and some of the other things. And there's a lot of tie-ins with that. And we have a large pulp collection as well as other periodicals. And certainly when people come and talk to me about the collection, I mention all of those other collections that we have throughout the library. Maybe it's a blog post that we could write someday. Yeah. All right. Who else has a question? What are you reading right now? Anybody? Yes. Yes, Webtoons. At the moment, I have not been successfully able to crawl anything on Webtoons because of the licensing agreements are unclear. Even if I could get permission directly from the artist, I don't know if I have permission from the Webtoons people. And so the dual permission part, there isn't a box in my system to do that. I'm still trying to figure that out. It's on my radar, though. The subscription services, anything that requires a password we can't get to because it requires too much human intervention with the web archiving. But some of the Webtoons that are kind of freely available, there aren't two boxes in the Copyright Office, and our lawyers want me to get permission from everybody. Just to make sure that we're all, good with the owners and everything. So we're working on it. Yeah. Have I read Noelle Stevenson? Yeah. So I have. We have Lumberjanes. It's very exciting. She came to, I believe Noelle came to the Small Press Expo a few years ago, and I missed her, and I was really disappointed in that. But I'm trying to see. I think one of the artists that she works with actually is local, so I'm trying to see if I can get her to come and speak. And I think she works with Ryan North, right, on Unbeatable Squirrel Girl at this point. Maybe not. So maybe if we can get Ryan to come, he can bring Noelle along with her. But yeah, Lumberjanes, I've enjoyed reading that one. Yeah. Are we collecting, I'm sorry, what films? We do collect Chinese books and films. So the Asian division actually, I did a presentation with a specialist. He gave me a number of material, a figure, and I'm blanking on it totally. George, what did Cameron say in the presentation? How many items? I mean, we collect internationally. So we have materials in Chinese, Japanese. We have, I think there were over 100 Asian languages represented in the library's Asian division. I know they just digitized and made available a really rare Gandhara scroll that's on the library's website now. But we actually have a number of reference specialists who work with materials published in Chinese and in China. Yeah. That have previews? We do. So it's a little bit happenstance because sometimes if it's not stuck in there then it falls out of the issue. We do collect Free Comic Book Day preview stuff as well. So those are kind of a separate collection. We have some of the titles the publishers don't send us consistently, so I have to keep going after them, but we try to get as much as we can. I think, yeah, you had a question? We do. There is an internships and fellowships office that you can, on the library's website. I'm hoping next year, so the library has a summer internship program that we call the Junior Fellows Program, and I'd love to get somebody next year, hopefully, to help me work with the comic book collection. I'm not sure doing what, maybe cataloging, maybe just processing, but I can't guarantee they'll give me approval to do that, but hopefully. And it's a rare paid internship in Washington, D.C., which is, like a unicorn. I think the applications open in January, February. So keep an eye out on the library's internships page. Yes.
Hi, I'm Missionary Range, and I am the copyright owner of Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, and Blue Lives Matter. And I was interested in starting a comic book that would teach the true narrative, because unfortunately, a whole lot of pirating has occurred, racketeering, and all sorts of things. And I am in the process of making sure that people know that All Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter work together. And so a comic book would be a great way of sending out the true message that All Lives Matter is the all set in mathematics. I'm a former math teacher, and it means that all are included and no one is left out. And so Black Lives was just one of the subsets in my sermon, because I'm a missionary now, and I want to know how I would go about doing that, getting either sponsors or persons who would then create the book, or I could do the creation, and how could I work with your office and those to send out the true narrative of that work, which is a peacemaker and not, dividing the two?
Yeah, so, I mean, we don't necessarily have a contact list of artists or authors. There are actually websites that have directories of cartoonists available. I'm trying to think. I think that it's called Women Cartoonists, and then there's a Cartoonists of Color database as well. And then, to get materials into the library's collections, the Copyright Office, submitting your material through the Copyright Office is often the best way to get your material considered for the library's collections. We don't collect everything, but we do collect a lot. And so, you might want to come in. You could certainly welcome to come in and use the collection to kind of get some inspiration. I know there's various comic books and graphic novels that have done. There's one on copyright. There's a comic book on copyright. So it's not just superheroes. And so, yeah, it's actually kind of cool. I'll take one last question, and then I think we have to be all done, but I will take questions afterwards. So, yes.
I was actually going to respond to her, but if this is over, then I can let somebody else do the last question, and I can speak to her directly.
Okay. One last question. Anyone? Yes. Over the last few decades of comics, what trends have I seen that have been exciting? Wow, that's like asking somebody to pick your favorite book when you have a whole library. This may get me kind of a lot of flack from people in the audience, but I've kind of been interested in the storylines where, when Jane Foster becomes Thor. And so kind of looking at sort of not the established characters and sort of reinventing them for new audiences and new storylines. So Miles Morales as Spider-Man, or Kamala Khan as Ms. Marvel. So people may not agree with me on that one, but I'm going to throw that out there. So anyway, thank you so much for coming. Please feel free to come up and ask me questions. And I really do hope that you feel like you can come to the library and use our collection. We really want you to come and use it, and also suggest things that you might want to see or programming that you might want to have. Thank you.